and reiterate your pectoralis muscles, folks. Remember the xiphi humoralis? And on this one, you can see the definition pretty well when you start pulling down on between the latissimus dorsi posteriorly and the pectoralis group anteriorly. It's all one, and you can actually get in there and kind of dissect that. You can free that connective tissue and free that up. But then you can kind of go up towards the axilla and then pull down. You can actually see the width of the xiphi humoralis. Let me use this as like a caliper. So, and we can't, the point, can you see how the pectoralis group bilaterally forms a nice point on the xiphoid process, hence the name. But so we have the width of the xiphi humoralis. It's like a band that comes up, and its fascicles weave into the belly that's more superior than the xiphi humoralis is and we can just kind of see it right here. It's also a kind of a band. It's called the pectoralis minor. Yeah, it's larger than the major, but it's inferior to it, hence the name. So there's the width. Can you just see that? How can you tell where that margin is? Because then you're starting to see fascicles going a little bit less vertical. And there, in this triangle, right here, there's the pec major. Okay? It's actually, actually it's a little higher than that. It's up here, there, right in through here. Pec major, then there's the pecto antebrachialis, is just a thin band, but that's the one that goes straight across the chest to the elbow. And as I was saying, the xiphi humoralis muscles weave into the pec minor muscles, the fascicles. The pec minor fascicles weave into the pec major. And then the pec major and the pecto antebrachialis, they're the ones that actually have the fascicles that go all the way over to the humerus, because hence the name xiphi humoralis. Yeah, because this muscle does AB duct the humeruses. Humeri, whatever. And then remember there's a little bit of margin of pectoralis major above the pecto antebrachialis, and you're seeing that right here. A little hard to see, and it doesn't go all the way over. It's see there's the margin of the pecto antebrachialis right there. And okay, yeah, Margaret came in. I saw you, Margaret, and all of a sudden my brain triggered that, okay, somebody came out and got you, so good. So there's the belly of the pec major. Again, not that it's continuous with this pec major. They're two bellies, but they have the same name. So, okay. So that's the pec group. So today, we also want to do what's called the abdominal group of muscles. And there are 4 abdominals. There's what's called the external oblique, the internal oblique, the rectus abdominis, and the transversus abdominis. I'm going to go to the board and just show you something. And we can see it actually on our torso models that if we draw some of the outline of the body, the umbilicus, here's the anterior superior iliac spines and the symphysis pubis, okay, the top of the thighs. That we know we have this midline, right? Everybody know what the name is, the linea alba. Why is that a white line, folks? Are there any muscles right in your midline? None. Nothing. There's just the epimysium of the muscles on either side fuse. Those do fuse with one another. And across the midline, there's not one muscle except for sphincter muscles, which aren't in the abdomen. So we've done all of our pec group. I guess it doesn't come down that low. So we've done all of our pectoralis group. So what happens is, right in the midline, there's a muscle called the rectus abdominis whose fascicles run straight up and down. And there's a right belly and a left belly of your rectus abdominis muscle. It has a very nice straight lateral margin. Okay? Now, to attach, it comes down and its epimysium and the fusion of all the connective tissues forms a rolled edge and hangs onto a ligament. A ligament runs between your anterior superior iliac spine and your symphysis pubis, and that forms the anchor for all the abdominal muscles. But especially this rectus abdominis comes down and kind of this connective tissue rolls around, and so the ligament, this inguinal ligament it's called, and that's why I told you really had to know the name of this region. This is called the inguinal ligament, and you can palpate that on yourselves. That's a very prominent demarcation between the end of the pelvic area and the beginning of the thigh. So you can kind of dig in there and you can feel that. And the rectus abdominis comes down and its edge rolls to hang on. So that ligament is in what's called the inguinal canal. Because the next muscle, the external oblique abdominal muscle, it's called oblique because its fascicles run obliquely, neither straight up and down, neither straight across, they run obliquely. And this muscle, folks, is massive. Its medialmost margin just slightly overlaps the lateral margin of the rectus abdominis. So, and I'll show you that when we go to dissect it. Actually, it's a little bit farther down. And its tendon comes down and kind of does the same thing and hangs on to the inguinal ligament, thus creating the inguinal canal. And it does that bilaterally. Well, then, if we reflect the external oblique muscle, if we pull this back like this, and then now its fascicles kind of go this way, this way. Anyway, yeah, if we pull it back, we're looking backwards. Then we go, the muscle beneath this muscle is called the internal oblique, but its margin doesn't come anywhere near the midline. The external oblique only comes about that far. It's quite a ways lateral from the margin of the muscle that overlies it, called the external oblique abdominal muscle. The internal oblique is quite a bit lateral, and it's a much wimpier muscle. Its fascicles run the 90-degree opposite direction, because it's called the internal oblique. So we have fascicles running straight up and down. We have fascicles running obliquely from lateral to medial and downwards, like putting hands in pockets. We have fascicles running 90 degrees to those, the other way, that's the internal oblique. And then deep to these two layers is the transversus abdominis, whose fascicles run straight across the abdomen. So in that way, we get real effective compression of our abdominal cavity. For when you're, lifting something heavy and you kind of take a breath and then you compress, you need to kind of change the pressures in the abdominal and the thoracic cavities. So to show you those 4 abdominal muscles, that's why I wore pockets today. I came down here, and please know that this rectus abdominis muscle, it starts way up here on the first rib. So this is a real extensive muscle. But when you first will see this cat without any dissection having been done, you're going to be kind of taken by the fact that, and I wish I could do this side, but there was a big incision here. You're going to have the same thing, so we only have the one side. But you'll see a really nice coloration, kind of laterally, and you won't see the margin of the rectus abdominis, because there's the external oblique, which I've already kind of freed up its medial margin, and I've dissected through the fascial plane to reflect the external oblique muscle. As soon as I did that, look what I saw. This nice straight margin of the rectus abdominis muscle. And you can see that very clearly on the other side as well. Okay. And then I had to go quite a ways, and at this point, folks, it might be well for us to sever the weaving together of the pectoralis group with the latissimus dorsi, and at that point, you can actually, it's hard to see it exactly, but there'll be a place where there'll be just connective tissue, and you cut kind of straight up to the armpit. You don't want to go too deep, though. You don't go too high, because at that point you'll be able to. There's the latissimus dorsi group posteriorly. Here's the pectoralis group anteriorly, and can we see the margin of the rectus abdominis muscle? It starts way up on the first rib. Most people don't realize that. They think, well, it's just in your abdomen, but in any event, it comes all the way down. And it's the longest muscle in the body, actually. And so once you've reflected the external oblique and see how the fascicles run, I mean, you can really see that, like putting hands in pockets from lateral to medial and downward. When you reflect that and you reveal your rectus muscle, you can either free part of the rectus muscle or not. I cut underneath it so you can see, and then we can't get to the other side because the linea alba is right there. But the idea is you don't have to free all of that. But where are you going to look for the the internal oblique? You're going to look quite a ways lateral. And I just happen to have found, see how it's quite uneven, but see how I know I'm in tendon? I cut only where it was yellow and connective tissue. I didn't cut anything muscle. And the internal oblique, its fascicles run 90 degrees to the external oblique fascicles. These run this way, these run that way. And you can see that this is a much more what's called friable, meaning it tears much more easily. See how pretty hefty the external oblique is, okay? The internal oblique is very much less hefty. And
is it the density?
It's not as dense a muscle. The myofibers just do not pack, nor is the connective tissue quite as strong. And I'm not sure why, but and this cat is pretty little, and you can see I didn't reflect all of the internal oblique, but what's deep to the internal oblique,
transverse.
and you can see that those fascicles run straight across. So for you folks that have the skin already in the back, be working on your abdominals. See how clean a cut. I mean, see how extensive you can make it. I'm pretty much all the way up. You can see the external oblique finishes up right about there. Yeah. And you can pretty much get all of that to reflect, but in terms of the internal oblique, you might only get, this little bit. So don't be, and don't be afraid to sever the connection between the latissimus posterior and the lats anterior, unless you don't want to do that just yet, because I don't want you to go too close to the underarm, to the axillary region, because there's a lot of vessels and things in there that we want to keep for next part. Okay, so let me quickly, I'm just going to chew the cat.